Welcome to the Clinical Research Podcast, bringing you the latest developments in research explained by our world-leading clinicians, academics and scientists based in Nottingham. Research is everywhere in Nottingham University Hospitals, not just on the wards, but down that corridor, in that block, on that floor where you've never had any particular reason to go. And nobody has the time to go wandering around randomly on the off chance they'll find something they didn't know they were looking for in the first place. So how do you find out what you don't know that you didn't know? One way is the Learning at Lunchtime series, set up by senior research nurse Dr. Sarah Brand. She explained what it's all about.
So Learning at Lunchtime was a new initiative. We wanted to look at putting on some informal developmental opportunities for a range of research staff to give them a bit of chance to be out of their routine clinical practice, out of their routine work, to just consider some of the broader issues around research, to get some speakers in to talk about what they were doing, and also so that research staff could understand the wider context in which their work's set, so in the national, regional and local context within where their research work is set.
So how did it work? What was the first one like, for example?
So we had the first one yesterday, which was great, and we had a really good turnout from research staff. We were really pleased. It was Dr. Gordon Hill who came to talk about his doctoral work, where he looked at how clinical research nurses interact and relate to frontline clinical nurses, and to see how their work's perceived, to see how they manage to do their work within the frontline clinical practice setting.
Do you think it sounds like something that he might have got as much out of as the nurses?
Yeah, so I think he was really pleased to be able to talk to us at Learning at Lunchtime, because he obviously wants to disseminate his work. He wants people to know what he's found out. And actually, I think a lot of his work really resonated with a lot of the research nursing staff. I know that it certainly resonated with me in terms of how sometimes I relate to and interact with the frontline clinical nurses. So I think he was really pleased to be able to speak to us. He is based in Scotland, in Glasgow, so being able to use a virtual platform was really useful, because it means that we can get speakers from a long way away who would routinely have to travel if we were doing it face to face, and actually the virtual aspect of it makes it much easier. People can just dial in, they can eat their lunch from their own office or wherever they are, still have the development opportunity, be able to listen into what's going on, but just a chance for us all to connect. Even though we're separate, we can connect on that virtual platform.
I'm just thinking, if people weren't able to listen to there, what would be the kind of, I don't know, 2 or 3 key things that people might have taken away from that?
So he spoke really about how research nurses negotiate their way in the clinical area, but he raised some really interesting points about how sometimes as research nurses we ask permission to do research in the clinical areas, and actually perhaps we should be a bit bolder about, of course, introducing ourselves and making it people know who we are, so because that's common courtesy on somebody's ward. But actually we don't need to ask permission to approach patients. The patients don't belong to anybody, they're our patients, and if we feel that they're eligible for research studies, then we can be bold about appropriately approaching those patients. He did a really interesting thing where he asked clinical research nurses what metaphor they would use, what kind of animal they would say they were in their research nursing role, which I thought was a really interesting way of doing things. Some people said they were swans, and part of that was being elegant on the top and feet paddling underneath, but also people also said that they were referred to as swanning in and swanning out, which people found perhaps a little bit negative, and they wanted to recognise that actually they might come into and lead a clinical area, but actually they're working across a wide range of clinical areas. Somebody said that they were a cuttlefish, I think, because they could change their colour and be lots of different things to different people. So I thought that was really, really interesting. And he also raised some really good issues about what we might want to look at next. So in terms of looking at, he looked at how clinical research nurses perceive themselves, but actually there's quite a lot of work to do looking at how frontline clinical staff perceive research nurses, so to look at it from the other side. And certainly there's some really great opportunities of things that we could take forward here in Nottingham, looking at exploring those issues further.
What do you think those issues might be, how clinical and research perceive each other, I suppose? I
think sometimes there's a lack of understanding about what the clinical research nurse job is. from the frontline clinical staff, because of course if there are lots of jobs in the hospital that we have never done, so don't really understand what they're all about. I think that there's some work to do on frontline clinical staff understanding the value of what the clinical research nurse job, how important it is. And I think certainly COVID and the pandemic has helped with that, because research is very high profile and research nurses have been much more visible across the trust. So I think we are making progress with that, but I think that there are certainly some work to do there. And I think it's really about embedding clinical research within our routine clinical practice within NUH. So people see that clinical research nursing is just another role along with the rest of the multidisciplinary team.
Do you think there are specific things that we can look forward to that might be happening along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think since the pandemic, we've looked a lot at our research nursing staff, how we utilise them across the trust, how embedded they are in different areas of clinical practice. And I think that whilst that has been sometimes difficult to navigate with the changing context of COVID, I think that it's definitely gives us some opportunity, and we've had to really look at how we can maximise the effectiveness and efficiency of our research nursing staff. But also how we can work more closely and engage better with frontline clinical staff so that we can facilitate our work and that our research work is easier to do in clinical practice. So I think it's an ongoing thing, and I think that there's plenty of work to do, but we've made some really good progress, certainly during the pandemic, in re-evaluating how we work and how we can work better as one big team.
What have you got coming up at the following lunches, and when are they going to be?
So Learning at Lunchtime is going to be a monthly thing, hopefully, an hour's informal session via Teams where people can have their lunch, dial in, listen to what people are saying. So the next one is in May, and that will be Michelle Eves from the East Midlands CRN, and the title of her presentation is the CRN, what it does and what it can do for you. So the aim of that is so that research staff can understand more what the CRN is all about, what they do, what their role is, but also to show what development opportunities there are within the CRN for research staff, because there's lots of development opportunities. They facilitate quite a lot of training and education that perhaps some research staff don't know about. So Michelle's going to be publicising that. And then the month after that will be Louise Bramley talking about clinical academic careers, because obviously within the research community we do a lot of clinical research, but also the other side of that is clinical academic research and people following the clinical academic pathway. And quite often clinical research nurses make really good clinical academics and are interested in that because they have a understanding of what research is. But Louise is going to be talking about the clinical academic pathway, how people can access that and what the opportunities there are there. And then we are open to offers for further sessions. So if anybody's got any ideas of speakers that they'd like to hear, things that they would like to know about in the broad context of research, so it can be anything, then just let me know and we'll try and facilitate that as best we are able.
Okay, so where can people find out more either about the sessions or if they've got suggestions?
So people can find out more by looking at research features, by asking their team leaders, because the team leaders should know about all of the sessions, and also to get in touch with R&I comms if they want their names want to be added to mailing lists and such like, so that they will get all of the communications about all of the development opportunities, learning at lunchtime and everything else that Research Futures can offer.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Sarah. Thanks for listening. There are links in the show notes for more information on clinical research in Nottingham, and the website is nuh.nhs.uk/research. Our email and social media links are there too. If you want to stay up to date with the Clinical Research Podcast, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Google, wherever you normally get your podcasts. The more shows are rated and reviewed, the more search engines like them, and the easier it is for people to find us. So if you can subscribe and rate and review us, you'll be doing it for science, not just for our egos.